Welcome. Today we would focus on the paper solutions for paper 2, that is Geography of India section B. Now this is one of the last sections in your paper. Very common questions were asked for this section and therefore scoring becomes very high. Now the first question was regarding the success of Panchayati Raj. Now when we focus on Panchayati Raj, we need to explain the grassroots level development. So the three levels of Gram Panchayat, Panchayat Samiti and Zilla Parishad need to be explained. Then the various grassroots level movement which focuses on bringing people together, aligning the movement, signatures, petitions, raising funds, raising monies, demonstrations, asking individuals for submitting the opinions are some of the ways through which we can say participation can turn out to be successful participation. Now what all areas are where the participation is required? It can be related to natural resource management, it can be for capacity building, more for women governance, women effectiveness in governance. Then we have various schemes, for example Jawahar Gram Samriddhi Yojana. So all those are some of the basic points that you need to address. Then you need to focus on the merits of Panchayati Raj, and these merits ultimately would explain how this Panchayati Raj turned out to be successful way of people's participation. The next is the benefit of neem coated urea for Indian agriculture. A very important question. This was also asked in your prelims last to last year. So for mains again it was important. We mentioned that time as well. Now neem coated urea, some of the benefits are it slows down the process of nitrification of urea. That's the most important thing. Since it's coated with neem, it slows down the process of nitrification, enhances the yield. So yield actually increases. Requirement for urea decreases. So urea requirement decreases. Also leads to slow release. So slow release of urea, which ultimately brings in more nutrients and is beneficial for the soil. It is a natural insecticide. So those are some of the major points that you need to address. And also with neem coated urea, subsidized urea would be shifted towards chemical industries, and that is one of the major benefits. Now those are some of the basic points that we have discussed. Saving the losses which are occurred by urea can be checked. Proportional saving in the form of consumption of naphtha or natural gas can be done. Crop yields would increase, which would lead to more higher productivity, increase in the farmer's income. The next is canal irrigation has led to monocropping rather than multi-cropping. So when we say monocropping, we mainly focus on two things. One is the rice, which is paddy, and other is wheat. We call these basically in the ambit of monoculture crops because these are the common crops which are grown when there is canal irrigation. Indira Gandhi Canal example is a very must example. And should be cited here. Monoculture has been affecting first of all the nutrient of the soil, the fertility of the soil. The next important thing we need to address here is it is also problematic in limiting the farm size. So diversity reduces. It impacts the diversity of the soil and also kind of profitability, because since there is monoculture crop, the profit margins would decrease. Now for all of these questions, again I would like to mention here, it's good if you could bring in certain statistics. So if you have been following Yojana Kurukshetra on a regular basis, you would have ample of statistics to sustain, to supplement with your answers. And also it's not required that with every question either you bring in a case study or you actually explain the question into detailed form with the help of diagram. But wherever possible, yes, diagrams are important. Maps are important for Geography of India. The next is the pattern of growing ecological footprint is uneven in nature with reference to land use in India. Now what is first of all ecological footprint? Let's first explain this. So ecological footprint is nothing but simply explained as biological diversity either in land or in the land, the coastal areas, the sea areas, which can provide renewable resources for the people who can consume it and also to absorb the waste which is generated. Now the pattern of ecological footprint in India is very interesting. India is third heavier ecological footprint in the world, and its resources use is double its capacity. So we have a very huge population pressure versus the resources, and that is something that we need to understand. Now but at the same time, we are not a consumer based economy, so we are not a use and throw economy, and therefore the ecological footprint in the relative manner is lighter in India as compared to United States. It's 9 times lighter as compared to United States, and 3 times lighter as compared to global footprint. So material deprivation is one of the reasons. Then the ability of the society as a culture to reuse and reuse makes it lighter. Decentralized distribution is another reason, and the economy as a means to perform daily activities would require lesser consumption. The next is the challenges faced by the generative and the parasitic towns in India and the possible remedies. Now, most of the urban governments lack the planning framework, and therefore there are inefficient planning systems, inefficient land use systems, rigid master plans. The building requirements which limit the urban densities are not proper. Sometimes the rent control, we can say, is outdated. So all these issues actually lead to generation of parasitic towns. So what could be the best way out? The best way out is focusing on few of the challenges. For example, planning is one of the major challenges to be addressed. Housing, another major challenge. Then we say service delivery. Infrastructure, another important thing to address in urban areas, and then environmental concerns. So if these five aspects are well addressed, then we can say a city would not be as parasitic as it can be if these go uncontrolled. Now, urban areas, urban area management are very, very important. We had another question on urban sprawl. So these are the topics that you must and must cover for your upcoming exams as well. Very, very important topics. The next is digital divide in India needs a quick address. Why? Now in India, we have seen growing regional disparity. We have further seen this increase due to pandemic. That is one of the things that you can cite here. Now how? We can jot down the case studies and data for rural-urban divide, gender divide, social divide. We can also talk about the exclusions, the tribal groups, how they have been affected because of the digital divide. So those are some of the figures where you need to bring how the things have been changing. Internet as one of the things, then telecommunication, accessibility to mobile. Now we do have payments with e-rupee we are talking about nowadays, and this focuses on a transaction which would be simply through a mobile without any bank account, without any internet banking, and therefore again important. So bring in developments like this, the NCPI development, the UPI development, financial inclusion schemes are some of the ways through which we have addressed this issue. So digital divide definitely is important. Not only in this digital divide has impacted the finance, it has impacted the healthcare services, it had impacted the education services, and even the agriculture, with lots of agriculture and facilities available now through mobile applications. This would create a further divide if not controlled. What is avalanche is another question. The causes and the mitigation. The most important thing to understand about an avalanche is the slope shallows enough so that the snow can accumulate, but at the same point it becomes steeper so that it accelerates and sits in a motion where there is combination because of the mechanical failure, which ultimately leads to an avalanche. So first this slope is shallow, there is accumulation of snow, and then it is steep enough for it to accelerate and lead to a mechanical failure. So causes, definitely human triggered anthropogenic causes are some of the major causes. Besides the anthropogenic causes, there can be earthquake activities, snowstorms, we can say. Other possible reasons can be use of all-terrain vehicles. These vehicles actually lead to vibrations, very very important concept, less heard of. Sometimes there are significant warm temperature or warm seasons, unexpected warm seasons, or extreme conditions of any sort. We can say even extreme snow would be responsible for avalanche. How it can be mitigated? So proper planning, proper infrastructure, explosives should be set in order to prevent the avalanche, and trigger small avalanche wherever required. So that is one of the ways of using explosives. Then fencing, snow fencing could be done in areas. There can be ways where stabilization of the snow can be done, and reduction in the slope line can be one of the ways through which we can address it. Now, demographic transition is not uniform in India. In context of the theory of demographic transition, explain this. So first you have to explain the very fundamental of demographic transition theory, the stage 1, 2, 3 and 4. That's the pre-transition, transition, late transition and the post-transition, and then explain how states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Goa are doing good. They are on the way of late transition. However, on the other hand, we have states like Bihar, UP, which are in the pre-transition states. So within the country, we have seen there is lots of variability in terms of the demographic transition and how this scenario needs to be addressed. So just go back and refer our class on demographic transition, and that would help you understand. Seismic zones of India. Here is the map as of 2002. We now have not 5 but 4 zones. We start with zone 2, low risk, to zone 5, which is very very high risk, and then we focus on how the things have been changing here. Now we mark out the zones which are high risk zones. So zone 5 areas are marked in red, as you can see here. The regions of Kutch, Northeast and the Himalayan belt are some of the reasons. And what are the sustainable human settlements interventions that could be required? So structural steel, wood and futuristic materials, which is mainly bamboo and memory alloy, are some of the good examples to address these issues. We can also point out certain cities which lie in the high risk belt and certain cities which are in the low risk belt, and those which are in the high risk belt, how there can be sustainable interventions in human development. There can be floating houses similar to what we have seen in Japan, where whole of the structure moves with the earthquake waves and therefore protects it. The next is blue flag. We have covered a separate lecture on blue flag beaches, a unique way of enhancing beach tourism. Now these are the proposed sites which have been mentioned under the blue flag certification. The characteristics for the blue flag are very very important, as we have already discussed. Just to bring it again, environmental education, focusing on water quality, cleanliness of the beaches. Then we have environmental management as some of the major issues that are addressed under blue flag certification. Once all of these are done, it provides a boost for enhancing the tourism prospects, bringing in more employment opportunity, international recognition, international tourism coming in, more of activities and jobs being generated. So growth in employment, growth in job, growth and development of the region and the surrounding are some of the significant benefits which we can see. The next is, as I mentioned, another question related to, one was related to generative and parasitic town. Here we have urban sprawl. So urban sprawls around the planned cities have been emerging, and this has led to the square settlements. Now we have the blue dot settlements, as we say, the blue polygons. Now these blue polygons are those regions which have been observed from the satellite, and in the squatter areas where blue sheets are put as the roof of the houses, and this indicates that there has been significant urban sprawl. So causes of urban sprawl, first of all we need to understand, in the urban areas the cost of living is very very high, the cheap land is not available, rents are high, the spendings are very high, people are basically not living into a peaceful scenario. Then we have problems related to sanitation, problems related to healthcare services, higher property tax in those areas are some of the reasons which bring in a outgrowth which leads to square settlements. And then This definitely have their own disadvantages because there is more of congestion, more of traffic problems, unhealthy living conditions, sanitary issues. Recently we had talked about the issue of Dharavi, where we have seen the COVID outbreak had significantly impacted the lives of the people, how the jobs and the services were affected. Now also there was a huge spread, but ultimately it was controlled. But those are some of the case studies which actually you can cite in your examples, and India is one of the nations which have been working significantly for development of the urban areas. Now the next is the changing nature of workforce composition vis-a-vis rural-urban divide. So as you can see, the proportion of urban male and rural male have been significantly higher in workforce, but when it comes to female workforce, rural areas to urban areas, in the rural areas the workforce has been significantly declining. Now the objective of economic reforms was to bring in more employment opportunities, more growth options. We have fast growing marginal labor which is significantly increasing. The gender wise analysis of the main and the marginal labor is again important. So we need to understand main labor versus the marginal labors, those which can work more than 183 days in a week, or less than in a year, or 183 days and more in a year would be under main. If they are less than 183 days in a year, then they would be classified under marginal. So dividing the population again into gender basic classification, so male female classification, main and marginal classification are some of the classifications and their respective statistics which you would include in this answer. The next question focuses on South China Sea. So first of all, we would identify the area which has been claimed by China as part of South China Sea, and then the China strings which have been developed. Now there are certain reasons for interest of China, of India, strategically, and there are two major causes. First is the economic cause, because we are trying to secure a trade transit route which passes through the South China Sea, and with this India would have a stronger position in trade relations. We are also reducing the dependency on the maritime nations and increasing the trade with the nations of East Asia. So that's on the economic perspective. Coming on to the geopolitical perspective again is important. India is fearing the growing assertiveness of China, mainly in the Indian Ocean, as part of the Pearls and the Maritime Silk Road which is being developed, and we need to have a close eye on the developments which are being done by China. Then Act East policy is again one of the major reasons through which India is trying to bring in more strategic interest in South China Sea and bringing in a regional security. The last question here focuses on the kind of skill promotion programs that have been initiated for job deficient regions in India. Now, various skill development programs have been brought into effect. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, Rozgar Mela, then we have various web portals which are part of it. The idea is to provide training, recognition of prior learning, which we call as RPL, and this has been extensively covered in our editions of Yojana and Kurukshetra. How more new growing areas like gem industries, textiles, where skill development can be seen, training programs can be started, need-based programs can be curated, bringing in more courses for Skill India. India has one of the highest youth population in the world, and therefore development of fresh skills, recognition of original skills, recognition of prior learning, bringing in quality infrastructure, quality training, and more standardization and certification would be some of the ways through which we can actually promote jobs in the deficit region. And here are some of the strategies that have been explained. So collecting the information, upgrading the technologies, bringing in more opportunities. So job mela, rozgar mela are some of the ways through which we are ascertaining that there are more and more options for employment in the deficit areas as well, and we are trying to neutralize the rural urban divide, the gaps between the developed versus the developing regions, and rather than having a growth centric approach, the approach would be much more diversified for growth options and opportunities. So bringing in more IITs, more IIMs into peripheral areas, more AIMS being opened into the peripheral areas are some of these steps to bring in more skill development in the peripheral areas and not just the main urban growth centers. So this was a quick understanding of the kind of questions which are asked and what kind of content actually needs to be incorporated. If you are looking for detailed explanations, those are available at the doorstep tutor, and also most of these topics we have covered in our lectures where we have focused these topics into detail. So the information and the links are available in the description. If you have any further questions or doubts, feel free to raise those in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to answer those. Wish you a very good luck for preparation.